I wanted to be the parent that was conscious and present. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I have these emails to respond to. I want to schedule these clients in. And relinquishing that was difficult.
If you are or wanting to balance a family and career, this is a must-watch. Joining me today is a special reappearance from our first guest ever on the show, my dear friend and incredible psychologist, Nancy Sokarno. What are the skills or traits of, let's say, high-performing women when they become parents can actually work against them?
I can do it all. I have all the time in the world. I am driven towards success. I want to invest 110% into everything that I do until we become parents, where that sense of agency and autonomy shifts. All of these mundane things I found extremely difficult and became really, really overwhelmed. And I became then frustrated. This is unlike me. I always say to my clients, we're human beings, not human doings.
I personally felt myself and had like a bit of shame around having resentment towards your partner.
Lots of people will disclose that they have had lots of arguments in that first few months that they haven't previously, or that they view their partner in a different way that they never have before, but nothing has changed.
Do you have any sort of practical questions or conversation starters?
It's important to understand what it is that your partner needs rather than what you think they need. If anyone wants to transition into parenthood, it is really important that they... All right, balancers, welcome to another episode of the Balance Theory podcast. This is an extremely special episode. If you recognize today's guest, you are a real OG, because this is her second time on the show, but she was actually my first guest ever. We recorded in my apartment when I was still living in Sydney, and I'm very grateful to say that she's still a very dear friend of mine. Since we did our first recording, which was basically when the show ever came out, we have both gotten engaged, gotten married. We've traveled Europe together. We've both had baby girls. There's been so much that has happened in the last 5 to 6 years. So I'm very grateful to have what feels like a very full circle moment with you, my dear friend Nancy. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here. And so much has happened in the last 6 years that it feels surreal.
I know. This is very much an upgrade to our previous experience as well. A little bit. Just a couple of extra touches. But it's nice to have had you come on the journey with me, you know, like always reflecting on that first episode, which I will link in the show notes because it was a very good episode and it was, you know, post-COVID. But today we're going to talk about something which I think at the moment is very close to both of our hearts. It's something we've both gone through in the last 1 to 2 years. And that is the transition of becoming a mother, which is often referred to as matrescence.
Yeah.
We've been laughing about pronouncing that word. I hope I said it right.
Please don't roast us.
But it's been this beautiful evolution of becoming. It's, I don't know about you, but it's something in my life I've always very, very much looked forward to. But we're both very ambitious, very hardworking women who are trying to navigate and balance motherhood whilst maintaining our careers and businesses. So this episode is really going to dive into the psychology of that becoming. Yeah. I think for a lot of things, maybe other mums will be feeling, or people that want to become parents in the future as well can really relate to. So I'm very excited for today's chat.
Me too. It's definitely something that I have worked on in the last 15 months since becoming a mum, and it's a really exciting conversation to have with you because you too are now a mum, and that feels like it really resonates, particularly in this niche where, like you said, working mothers, high achieving, really wanting to make something of yourself, and then also transitioning into the motherhood role. And what does that look like? And like you said, what does that balance look like for us?
So I'm curious, because you obviously are a practicing psychologist. Did you do a lot of work in terms of preparing yourself for this transition before? And if you did, how much of that was actually useful versus being in the moment and actually going through it and just learning on the fly?
Yeah, I absolutely did. I think that it was really important for me to understand myself to the best of my ability. And that self-discovery happened over a long period of time. And I felt that I knew that I wanted to be a mother for a long time. And I knew that when the time came that I wanted to be that full potential self. And of course, like anything, theoretically, you can take on all of the knowledge and information, but when you are actually partaking in that role, it's a whole different experience. And you can apply the things that you've learnt over time, but
it just is a whole different ballgame when you are doing it day to day. And I really am someone who learns practically. And so I found that my knowledge, experience, skills really blew up when I became a mum. And I thought that I was prepared, and I thought that I knew all the things, the child development, the way that I'd like to parent, how much I knew myself, how much I knew my partner in our relationship. And until we became parents, all of those things were really highlighted.
Well, I think today what my intention is for our episode today is, number one, to learn from you about some of those things that you kind of thought through, or maybe even coach some of your other clients on in terms of that transition. And number two, then speak to our experience, because that I remember even just being pregnant and listening to other people's stories about their pregnancies. Like, I really learned a lot just through hearing other people. And I think it's also important to qualify and say that there's so many variables in and amongst this experience that I just think hearing different stories is a nice way for you to tap in and have it in the back of your mind as like armor as you're going through different things.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, there are so many variables that you take into account when becoming a parent, and your personal experiences, your ideologies, your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, your precepts that form who you are, and those things then transition with you into parenthood. And so it is something that I think people should take with a grain of salt when they are speaking to other people or women about parenthood, pregnancy, birth, postpartum period. It really is taking it on and understanding other people's experiences, which is amazing because you can resonate with some parts and you leave other parts behind. But your own personal experience is so nuanced and so important that you look at you and only you in that moment, because no two people are the same. And very much like we are so different in all of the other things that we do, career, relationships, friendships, family, self-development, that we have that same lens when it comes to motherhood. And I've found that over the last 15 months, and even when working with women who are, whether it's antenatal or postnatally, that there is this pressure to be a certain way and to be the right mother or a good mother, whatever that looks like. I think, again, there is so much nuance to that, and it's important that women really understand that you just can't be like the next person, and that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a good segue into my first question, which is, do you think motherhood is best understood as a role change or an identity reconstruction?
I think, again, that's so varied, because for some people, they'll step into the parenting role and they'll rediscover themselves. And the you is on a continuum. And so we are ever evolving, ever growing, that we don't stop and start who we are. We also don't go backwards either. I know that people refer to becoming mothers as wanting to go back to the old me. But she has evolved, and so she's wanting to continue to grow and change, and becoming that version of yourself is in front of you, not behind you. And so I think that it really is about reconstructing the identity that you perceive, and that role change happens because you become someone's carer, and this child is dependent on you. And so it really does depend on what that looks like for you. I think it's important for me to preface with, depends on how you view yourself. What roles do you tie to your identity? Is it that you tie your identity to roles or not at all? And so, there's so much variance there. And I think it's hard to say for all mothers that they would feel that it is a complete identity restructure, or that it is simply a role change, because I think it's both and or none of them. You know, I think that it really does depend on who you are as an individual and what that means for you and what you lean into.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about. I'm just kind of reflecting myself. I feel like for me it's been like an identity reconstruction in the sense of, or maybe it's more like it's it's fit into the way I see myself. Like I kind of see myself as a friend, right? As a nurturer in my workplace. Like, yes, it's corporate and I'm a bit more like masculine energy, but the way I show up is still like in a very kind, caring way.
Yeah.
And so I feel like becoming a mum has sort of fit into that identity that I've already had for myself, but maybe amplified it. I'd love to hear for you, like is it and or is it one or the other?
I think that given my role and my work,
Maybe give us a bit of context.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a psychologist and I work with lots of different presentations, lots of different people, and I really do feel like I'm a nurturer, and I care deeply and I empathize deeply, and I think that that's something that I really do tie my identity to. And so when becoming a mother, I felt that that was then amplified or highlighted those parts of me that were really warm and nurturing and caring, understanding, quite tolerant, patient, kind, all of those things that I know about myself, I really lent into. And when I transitioned into parenthood, I felt that those things really were highlighted for me. And that felt really in alignment. And I really did come into parenthood feeling like I was the best version of myself. And the things that were amplified after becoming a parent really felt like they resonated. And, you know, it absolutely is not all butterflies and rainbows. And I'm by no means saying that there hasn't been hard days, hard moments in parenthood, though I really do feel like I'm in my element here.
I love that for you.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's as your friend, it's such a beautiful thing to witness. And, you know, just seeing it as such a beautiful, organic, aligned part of who you are.
Okay, I don't know about you, especially the breastfeeding mums listening, but sometimes I feel like I'm literally drinking water all day long and still somehow feel dehydrated. Recently, I started mixing a Cure pack into the first glass of water before anything else in the day, and the difference in my energy is very noticeable. The Cure pack is a plant-based electrolyte with no sugar and no garbage. It's built on the same formula used in IV hydration therapy, meaning I actually feel like my water is hydrating me for the first time because my body is actually absorbing it. Mums, I know how easy it is to forget to look after ourselves when caring for little ones. So this is such an easy habit to quickly add into your morning to know you're supporting yourself at the start of your day. Plus, the stick packs fit so easily into the purse, pram, diaper bag, kitchen drawer, wherever you want to grab it quickly, making it so easy to remind yourself to hydrate properly. Staying hydrated is not just about drinking more water, as I thought. It's about your body actually using it. That's what Cure does. Clean ingredients, real science, and actually tastes so good. My favorite flavor right now is the watermelon. Use code BALANCETHEORY for 20% off at curehydration.com, or you can also find it on Amazon. Real ingredients for real hydration. Thank you so much to Cure Hydration for sponsoring today's show. Now let's get back to today's episode.
Talk to me about the kinds of things, like, you know, you said you work to becoming the best version of yourself and getting to know yourself before becoming a mother. What did that look like? Do you have anything practical you can walk us through that really helped you?
Yeah, I think that it's important to understand what makes you tick.
Your triggers?
Yeah, what do I love? What do I not so much? What irritates me? What do I need? What do I value? What do I want? I know, you know, the age-old existential question, who am I? And I think that it was really important for me to understand what it was that I was coming into and who I wanted to be. And so, for example, knowing that I am someone who really likes routine and structure and discipline, it's something that drives me, and it has allowed me to be the person that I've been for the last 10 years, something I really have honed in on, particularly around my career development. And so I know that I really thought about what that might look like for me coming into parenthood. The lack of control in a lot of the things when you're dealing with a newborn, sleep deprivation and what that might look like for mood regulation. What were the ways that I could conflict manage more appropriately with my partner if I was feeling irritable, agitated, sleep deprived. I find it really hard to ask for help, and have done for a long time. And I know that it takes a village, and it absolutely does. I've been shown that in the last 15 months. And so I really needed to work on my ego around that. When is it okay for me to put my hand up and say, hey, I need help, I'm struggling, or I may not have been struggling, but the help was necessary. And that has been really helpful as well, because I've really allowed myself to let people in and let them like pass the baton. That was really helpful. I think it was important for me to understand what I really valued about becoming a parent, less about having a child, but more about why. And I asked myself a lot of why questions. And you don't have to have the answers to that, but it's the curiosity, it's the exploration around getting to know yourself on a deeper level. And I think that sometimes we are scared to ask those questions because we might not have the answer. And it isn't so much about that. It is getting to know yourself in a way where you open up and be vulnerable and transparent about what it is, like I said, that makes you tick. And oftentimes it is just that.
Are you like someone who does that exploration through writing, through thinking? Like what's your, I know there's many different mediums, but I'm just curious, how do you actually go about that?
I am a talker, and therapy has been the most incredible thing, and I'm not biased here, for me to soundboard. And I think I know everything, but when I pose questions, I often hear answers that I haven't thought about, and they've given me an opportunity to reflect on something deeper than what I might have come up with. And it feels a little bit more objective when it's being sent to you, when you're receiving it in a way that you can sit and reflect and think rather than judge. I found that sometimes when I asked myself the question and I needed to answer it for myself, there was judgment associated, less a more subjective view on what it was that I was trying to get to rather than a reflection. That's really helpful for me. I'm someone who really thrives on conversation and being in other people's presence and energy. I'm more like vlog dump than I do writing. So if I have something to say to myself, I'll film it. And I have done for a while. I mean, I think also, starting YouTube like eons ago came from this like recording myself and talking about experiences that I had and then watching them back like a week later, a month later and being like, interesting. I didn't think that I felt like that at that time, but it's given me hindsight. That's really helpful. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Do you think it's normal for people to grieve the previous version of themselves?
The word normal refers to healthy and natural. And I think that it is both of those things. There is a part of transitioning into a newer version of yourself that you may grieve the parts of you that have been left behind. And you can also be really excited and looking forward to being this new version of yourself at the same time. And two truths can exist. And I think there are definitely parts of us that we grieve, and that is a very natural experience. And it's not something that we should look down on or frown. It's not frowned upon for us to mourn that version of us and be really looking forward to that part of us that is going to grow in a different way that it hasn't before. And when we allow that, it really does help in our process, that we don't judge and we don't view that in a negative way, that I should be experiencing this in a different way than I am. And I think that should is very tied to obligation and expectation, whether that's socially, whether that's familial, cultural, traditional, that it's important for us to really look at that and think, I can and choose to feel however I do. That there is no one that can tell me otherwise, and nor does it make me any less of a mum or a good mum if I feel that the parts of me that I potentially have left behind makes me sad, makes me potentially regretful, makes me worried, doubtful, stressed. That all of these emotions can exist, and if we don't judge them and we're curious and we're allowing of them and we honor them, give them space to exist, then we can process and move through that.
Yeah, it's often, you go through different experiences and there's this polarity of emotions, and often it makes you feel like there's something wrong. Like, how can I be feeling so excited to be a mum? Like, it's all I've ever wanted, but also feel like, I've just gone through this massive change, and like that's a part of me that I'm effectively never going to get back.
Yeah.
It's like this very polar experience, and it's not one or the other, it's both.
Yeah.
And, you also get a lot of unsolicited commentary when you're pregnant or have a baby or breastfeeding, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of that at the time can be quite jarring and negative.
With smartwatches, rings, and lab tests, we honestly have more access to our health data than ever before. It would make sense to me, at least, if our doctors and our practitioners could easily see or access all this health information in one central place. But the reality is our data is scattered everywhere and no one is looking at the full picture. That is, unless you're using Kinsen. Kinsen is the first telemedicine platform to securely bring together medical records from participating healthcare systems, and it works by combining your lab, wearable, and lifestyle data all in one central place. In doing so, it's able to give your providers a more complete picture of your health and more tailored product recommendations. A friend of mine was only just telling me how amazing it was to, for the first time, see all her health results and records, including all her Apple Watch data, in one central place. I really love that the platform actually won't even recommend you any products until it has the complete picture. So it really is this personalized, holistic approach. It comes with 24/7 messaging access to a licensed provider. You're able to connect all your wearable data like your Apple Watch, Oura Rings, etc. You can order lab testing through the platform, and you can get a personalized health experience guided by real healthcare providers, all from the comfort of your home. With Kinsen, world-class care and cutting-edge treatments are now accessible to all our US-based listeners. Head to kinsen.com/balance theory to take a free quiz and discover solutions guided by healthcare professionals tailored to your unique biology. That's kinsyn.com/balance theory. And don't forget to use the code balance theory at checkout to save 20% off your first subscription order.
One of the things I've spoken to a lot of my girlfriends about, I personally felt myself and had like a bit of shame around, but something I wanted to bring to this conversation, just so other mums who maybe have felt this or other people who are going to go into parenthood and may feel this in the future also understand it. Maybe not, it's not a just them kind of feeling.
Yes.
And that is this idea of having resentment towards your partner in the context of, for me, for example, my husband works from home. He's very hands-on with baby. But at the beginning, in those first few months where your showers and eating times are literally dictated by the small window where baby is asleep and not feeding because it's so around the clock. Whereas I'd look at my husband and he'd just have a shower whenever he wanted, or he could go to the gym on day 2 because it was in our building and so fine because go and exercise, boy, do your thing.
Yeah.
But there was a part of me that had some sort of resentment, I can't just pick up and go, this baby is dependent on me. And I love having this baby so much because it's all I've ever wanted. I've had girlfriends tell me stories about how, their husbands started returning to social events. But as you know, it's very hard to go out in those first few months because baby's feeding so much, especially if you're breastfeeding and whatnot. So can we go into this resentment a little bit? Because I think it's important to explore so it doesn't fester into a couple's issue when it doesn't need to be. It's maybe something we need to understand about how we're feeling and what we're going through.
Absolutely. I think that it is a very normal experience to have. This resentment comes from the injustice that women experience when having a child. I know that during pregnancy, I was extremely resentful of the fact that fitness is a huge part of my life and I exercise almost every day. It is more a mental thing than it is physical for me. And I kind of likened it to playing in the EPL when I was not pregnant and then kicking a soccer ball against a colorbond fence when I was. And so the transition and the adapting that I needed to do whilst being pregnant and particularly in the later months when I was super uncomfortable and just extremely tired, that really didn't change for my husband, and he could go about his day and he could sleep and eat and go to work and not feel exhaustion and
they're unaffected by it.
Yeah, particularly
physically,
100%. And then when having baby, like you said, life really doesn't change necessarily. Sure, from an emotional point of view, they've taken on a new role as well, but the transition isn't as
abrupt.
stuck for them. Yeah. And so I think the resentment comes from injustice, that I need to be at home caring for baby, not suggesting that dad isn't doing so, but you become the primary caregiver here. Again, there is variance here and there's nuance in this conversation, but I'm speaking particularly on my experience here, that it just really didn't change for him. And so physically my body had changed. Socially, I wasn't able to do the things that I wanted to do. Physically, I was recovering from having a baby, all of the things moving back into place, the hormonal changes, the emotions, the cognitive change, the sleep deprivation, all of these things that we have to experience that men don't. And so I think that it was that struggle to understand it logically and go, well, he didn't have the child, and so I understand why he can do these things, and it's really upsetting me and it's really frustrating me and I'm feeling really resentful. And that oftentimes the resentment is projected, and it is whether it's snappiness, irritability, agitation, a lack of tolerance or patience for your partner. Lots of people will disclose that they have had lots of arguments in that first few months with their partner that they haven't previously, or that they view their partner in a different way that they never have before, but nothing has changed in the relationship. But the dynamics have, and our responsibilities have, and our needs for one another have. And I think that it's important, particularly in those first few postpartum months, that we have these conversations with our partner and be really honest and open about the fact that, hey, I am feeling these things and I understand that this is the logic behind it. So I'm not attacking you, and I'm not making you feel or trying to make you feel guilty for it, but I need to be able to express the way that I'm feeling. Otherwise, we do bottle it up. And again, you're dealing with all of these hormonal changes at the same time. So it's a whirlwind, and it's something that needs to be spoken about far more than it is.
Did you and your husband have any conversations before baby came into the picture? And do you have any sort of practical questions or conversation starters that people listening just might be able to park and maybe use in their relationships?
We absolutely did. I think we talked a lot about our love languages, because it's important to understand what it is that your partner needs rather than what you think they need. And when I thought about becoming a parent, acts of service is something that I don't particularly view as a love language. I'm almost hyper independent. And like I said before, don't oftentimes ask for help. And so I felt that that was necessary for me to verbalize when Bub was born, that I would need him to step into that space, that having these acts of service shows me that we're teammates and that we can collaborate on this together. And that was a big conversation for us. It's also one thing to think about what we need, and then a whole other thing to step into parenthood and understand what it is that you need. And those conversations can be done beforehand, but most definitely need to happen afterwards as well. That just because you've had a child and this has changed for you, it was also changed for the dynamic of your relationship, and we can't just leave that to the wayside.
Yeah.
Another conversation we had around parenting and what that might look like. And I think that early on, it is less about parenting per se and more about surviving.
Looking after.
looking after this helpless being that requires our undivided attention and, needs to be changed, burped, fed, put to sleep.
On loop.
Yeah. Tick, 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 tick. that what might that look like for us, or what did we need from one another in terms of, for me, like I said, I'm someone who's quite disciplined, quite routined. I wanted to be able to go and do those things for myself. What might that have looked like? What did we expect of one another in terms of work and running businesses? We really put on the table things that were logical because I didn't know what was to come.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was important for us to have those conversations. And then when we stepped into parenthood, played it by ear.
Yeah. No, definitely. We did a very similar thing. The only other thing I would add to the list, and this was relevant to us because we had a lot of family visiting, but you might be in a situation where you've got family that wants to be very hands-on.
Yes.
We also spoke about boundaries with extended family and how we both felt about that, how much involvement we wanted people to have. If one of us felt overwhelmed, how the other one would jump in and support, especially if it was like their parents or my parents or, for example, anything like that.
Yeah.
And that felt really important to me because I didn't want to be, we had the first grandchild on his side, and I didn't want to be in a position where I felt bad feeling like I needed something, but then also I was taking away from someone else also going through a first, and so navigating that sort of conversation around, look, I don't know how I'm going to feel, but if I do feel a certain way, like, are you okay to have my back? Are you okay to set this boundary on my behalf?
Yep.
One thing I am also very bad at is asking for help.
Yep.
I think this comes from, again, I'm similar to you, our hyper-independence, our attitude of I want to do it all, I can do it all. This makes us very successful in what we do. It makes us achieve a lot of things. But in this particular season of life, it can very much work to our detriment. Yep. And one thing I didn't appreciate wasn't so much even when I need to ask for help and not being ashamed of that. That was a part of it. But also just accepting the help even if I didn't need it. Like even if I could do the laundry, like I had a C-section, right?
Yep.
So actually just sitting there, okay, I could get up and do the laundry. But like
having
if someone else, if someone else just did it and it was just nice and there was no like obligation or like I didn't owe them anything and it was just like someone just doing things for me and being in a place of just being able to receive that and accept that without feeling guilty was very hard for me at the beginning until I went through it for about a month. My mother-in-law was amazing for me during that time. It was phenomenal, but I found it very difficult and I felt very guilty in the beginning. So for anyone else listening who sort of resonates, like what's going on then? How do you, I guess, plan to be in a place where you can accept that kind of support, because it is so, so important that you're looked after during that time. So you can, because if you're focusing on baby and you have other people helping you and focusing on you, then that's like a really nice way to kind of move through it.
Absolutely. And I think, again, when we have children, people become really fixated on baby and what does baby need and how can we help with baby. And oftentimes mum really needs help too. Like you said, domestic duties don't stop. Breakfast, lunch and dinner needs to be cooked. All of these things that we need to take into consideration as well as raising a child. And so when we are as we are, high achieving, I can do it all, I don't need help, all of that, it really does become detrimental because we are being spread really, really thin. And like we said before, hormones are changing, emotions are impacted, you're sleep deprived. And so some of the things that we would find really easy to do become really difficult tasks. And I would really say that sitting with the discomfort of accepting things that you wouldn't previously is a very helpful way to work through this. That we can prepare ourselves with, like I said, the logic around, I will accept help, I will ask when I need to, or even when I don't. If someone says, I will do X, Y, Z for you, I will be accepting and receiving of that. I can say all of those things. And like I said, in theory, it seems great until you have to experience it. And understanding that it is okay for it to feel uncomfortable. It is okay for you to sit with the discomfort that comes up for you when someone says, I've got your back. I can do this for you without feeling that guilt or shame around, but I can't do it all. I want to, but I'm spread really thin, or it just is going to make my life a little bit easier here if I allow this to happen. I think that emotions it will come up and very much like a wave will dissipate if we don't get in their way. And oftentimes when emotions come up for us, we judge and we inflate and we try and decipher and understand why they are happening rather than just letting them be. And it's, I always say to my clients, we're human beings, not human doings. And the more that you sit still with your emotions and allow them to come up and then subside, the more that you're going to allow into your life and the more receiving you're going to be of the things that do make you uncomfortable. And in this season of our life, it is, like we said, a transition of things that we are unfamiliar with. And allowing ourselves to really just lean into the unfamiliar until it becomes an almost natural state. And I'm sure that you can attest to the fact that 5 months of Miller has made you feel that as if she's never not been here.
Yeah. Can't even remember a day without her, which is so crazy.
Yeah,
right?
that this just feels like you now.
Yeah, it is. It's inexperience. It forces you to like actually live it and do what you said you were going to do. And I feel like a good reframe for me at the time was the reality is if baby only had me right now, she would be fine. Like that's all she needs in those initial few months. She just needs to feed. All she knows is me, my voice. Like that's what she's known for 9 months. So like everyone else changing her and all this stuff is very helpful. But accepting that help for myself, letting someone else look after her or do the housework so I could have a shower. Like those little things make such a big difference. And a crazy thing that I mean, maybe it's not crazy now, me having gone through it and understanding all this stuff that happens was like cognitively, I, for the first time ever, found tasks so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that was so hard for me because I'm normally like a tick, 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 do it all, do the washing, do this, like quickly run through everything, get through everything. I'm very organized, like all my things in a certain way. And I just found I had like literally and this was even when I was starting to get back into work. I just had like a handful of things to do and it was just like so overwhelming. And I was getting so frustrated with myself, just feeling like I'm just not the same anymore. Like I feel like I'm, there's this huge gap between like my performance and the energy required to like do and achieve and then just be and nurture and be still with my girl and just like be present with her. Like it just felt so jarring at the beginning until I slowly like learned to just be with myself where I'm at. Let's talk about being a working mum.
Yeah.
It's a privilege in its own right to be able to have a career, maintain it, and be able to parent and nurture a baby with support.
Yes.
Like I want to acknowledge that because it's something I'm very grateful for. But I do want to speak to some of the challenges that come up in moving through that transition. I'd love for you to start off by just sharing personally your experience and then we can, workshop it a bit more.
Yeah. Like you said, this is really about having a village, being able to be a working mum and nurturing a baby at the same time is something that I definitely don't take for granted. It's a testament to the support that I have and my partner has been incredible about, again, helping me transition into this space. It is something that I didn't expect to find difficult. Like you were saying, simple tasks became really hard. I remember in the first 2 weeks of having baby, I think I couldn't open the pram. I just for the life of me couldn't get it set up and I burst into tears. I then had a fight with the car seat and couldn't get the sterilizer to work, and all of these really like what I perceived to be mundane things I found extremely difficult and became really, really overwhelmed with. And I became then frustrated because this is unlike me. And I want to talk on very quickly the baseline theory here, that if I started off at a 0, things that might be a 2 out of 10 objectively, like opening a pram, that might be 1 for science sake, meant that I would be a 1. But if I was starting off at a 8 out of 10 and I couldn't open the pram, I'm now a 9. And so I am really bubbling over to the top here. And I really looked at that as why I might have been feeling the way that I was feeling, rather than, again, judging myself about the fact that I couldn't do or felt that I couldn't do these really mundane things, that tasks that felt like a 1 previously are now a 9 for me.
That's very useful.
Yeah. And I really do like to reframe things in an acknowledgement rather than a judgment. How can I acknowledge what's happening here? How can I acknowledge why it might be happening rather than judging myself about why it is? I went not back to work full time, but I went back to work 3 weeks postpartum. And it happened that way. And I felt comfortable to do that because I had so much support. My mum is extremely hands-on. My husband is extremely hands-on. My sister is extremely hands-on. And so my beautiful friends, other family members. And so I felt that I was really supported to be able to transition back into that quite soon. Now, again, lots of things have changed since then in terms of working from home, being able to breastfeed and all of those things. But I think that it was really important that I looked at this with a change in the priorities that I had from being this successful, driven career woman to wanting to be a nurturing, loving, present parent, and being able to really, I guess, like mold those two things together. Felt that it was necessary to really know what I needed there and what it was that I could do practically, what was in my control at the time to be able to set myself up.
Can you speak to me about a real challenge you had when you were in that process of merging the two and sort of getting back into the flow of, okay, I have a baby now, I have support, but then there's so many logistics as well. Like if you're breastfeeding and then you're pumping and then working around those time schedules, but then also like your work slowly ramps up as well.
Yes.
You know, you maybe start with a couple consults a week and then it goes back to what you said before, 25, 27 clients a week you've got now. Can you run us through like a real challenge or a moment you had that you thought was going to break you?
I think that in the early years of my career, I really wanted to hit the ground running and I wanted to be here, there and everywhere all of the time. I wanted to run social media. I wanted to do workshops. I wanted to see, as many clients as
the day would allow.
Yeah. Well, ensuring that I was taking care of myself at the end of the day, but I really wanted to be everywhere. And I found it really hard to say no. And my boundaries were a little bit more lax when it came to work. I would work around the clock. I would send out emails at 11 p.m. I would do social media posts at midnight. I'd wake up at 5 and reply to emails. I really didn't have a cap on how much work I was doing because I ran my own business. It wasn't 9 to 5, Monday to Friday hours. I would work on the weekends. I would do reporting. And so I felt that, that was the only thing that I was focusing on. And so I could do that, as well as taking care of myself and ensuring that self-care is something that's really, really important to me. And so I was the main priority here. And I really did struggle with the fact that I no longer had 24-hour accessibility to my work and that I couldn't say yes to everything. And I needed to prioritize my daughter and I needed to prioritize feeding and being present and doing all of the things that I chose to do as a parent. And so I did have to pull back. I did have to say no. I had to be conscious of the fact that when I was working, and when I was parenting. And I didn't want the two to clash. And I didn't want to take away from being a mother and being a present mother. And so I would put my phone away or I would respond to emails 24 hours later. And that at the start was really difficult for me. I felt this urgency to do the work that I had always done for so long. But I also felt this need and almost this guilt that I was feeling the sense of urgency because I was being present with my child.
I'm like nodding so hard right now, like feeling everything you're saying right now.
Yeah. And I think that was my biggest struggle, that I wanted to be the parent that was conscious and present and just all in. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I have these emails to respond to. I want to schedule these clients in. I need to reschedule this thing or respond to these people or whatever it was. But I needed to sit with that discomfort. That is now okay for me to not have that sense of urgency. And relinquishing that was difficult.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, I honestly am going through this right now where I've spoken to a lot of mums, right? A lot of working mums on the show. And I think the best advice I got, which is very, very similar to what you just gave, is like, just be present with where you're at. If you're sitting with your daughter, don't think about work. And if you're at work, just be at work. Like kind of give yourself permission to just sit in whatever you're doing, because the reality is if you're at work, you're not being a mum in that specific moment of the day. And if you're being a mum, you're not working.
Yep.
And the truth is, like, if you're sitting there with your girl while she's playing and you're on your phone, you're doing both 50%. So you kind of, it's running at your own detriment. But I had a very, even like a couple of weeks ago, and I swear my daughter is an empath, because if I'm like trying to put her to sleep and I'm really calm and I've got nowhere to be, like she goes out like a light. If I'm sitting there trying to rock her and I'm thinking about all the emails I have to respond to, the girl does not go down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is my lesson in life, to just like be present and learn this skill.
Yeah.
But I just feel so guilty as well when I'm like with her and I'm thinking, all I can think about is like a bloody email I have to send. Like it's a real frustrating experience for me.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask you is, what are the skills or traits of, let's say, high-performing women or working women that are really determined that really work to their advantage pre-babies and then post, when they become parents, can actually work against them?
I think it very much is this sense of priority around, I can do it all. I want to do the best that I can with what I have. I have all the time in the world. I am driven towards success. I want to invest 110% into everything that I do. Nothing else, inverted commas, requires my attention or my priority but work. And that sense of selfishness and the control that we have around what our scheduling looks like, how much time we can invest in things, how much we can say no or yes to things, until we become parents, where those things, that sense of agency and autonomy shifts, and you do lose a sense of control around time. You prioritize becoming a parent, giving your time and your energy to your child, meaning that you have to take it away from your work. And that discomfort that you were saying before about putting her down and thinking about an email that you need to send, that guilt that comes with that, again, that's a judgment that we feel. This is a transition for us just as much as it is having this child, in that we have, yes, become a parent and we need to give them everything that we've got and we need to ensure that all of their needs are met, but our needs need to also be met. And that's going to take some time to understand and transition into as well, that it is okay for me to be prioritizing things I have prioritized for a very long time, whilst now giving my time and attention to this child and wanting to be the best parent that I can be. And so it really is, again, about the sitting of discomfort and really giving yourself the time to be able to understand that transition. And it doesn't happen overnight, and it might take months, years to get to a place where it really does feel like you're you again.
Yeah. I do feel she's teaching me a lot, and it's crazy. Like, I'm trying to, just be very self-aware as I go through this. Like, for example, when I did have that moment of frustration, I can get more frustrated, feeling like, why can't I just be present and put my baby down and have mental breakdown, which of course has happened. Or I can take that and have curiosity and be like, okay, well, what is it about this scenario that is not, that's unsettling for me?
Yeah.
Even like something else as simple as like when I'm with her, because it's so crazy. Like, we're growing children in a generation with tech, which I think is not something that we went. Well, it's not something we went through, especially the phone.
Yes,
and it's a tough one because we FaceTime grandparents every day.
Yep.
So she knows what the phone is.
Yep.
And already at 6 months old, if I have it out, she's looking straight at it, and it's crazy. So I'm very, very intentional about not having it around when she's there.
Yep.
So these little things have forced me to actually introspect and sort of think about my own habits What's something you've kind of learned about yourself as a byproduct of your girl?
I absolutely think that is a huge one for me because, and like you do, work is on your phone, and a lot of, or like you said, FaceTiming family, texting, emailing, or a lot happens on it. And so being aware of how much I use it because she is so aware of it. And so it really has highlighted to me how much time I spend on it. And it's a good conscious moment for me when I pick it up and she clocks it, that I'm like, oh, now I can put it down. And I didn't have that before.
Yeah.
No one was tracking my phone usage. And so
Apple was.
Well, yes. Actually, lots of people are tracking my phone usage. But it could have been half an hour, 45 minutes before I actually looked up from my phone.
Yeah.
And so now that is very much, I'm more aware and conscious of my behavior and my tone and my mood and the language that I use and the way that I speak to myself. I think that it really has almost like put up a mirror.
100%.
Which has been challenging and helpful at the same time. I think that it really has given me a better and deeper understanding of the way that I operate because I'm looking at me through her eyes. And that's been really helpful, I think. And I've made lots of changes, and I'm very intentional about the things that I do now, more so than I was before. And I like to think that I'm quite an intentional person, but she really has shown me that lots of things are done with an unconscious mind, and it's made me more present.
Yeah, agree. And it's a beautiful thing to, I think especially with like social media use, there's so many things you can try, like the app limiters, but like ain't nothing like a little child looking at you, what you're doing to like make you really not criticize, but like be aware of your own behaviors.
Yes.
If you're still watching at this point, something here matters to you. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future conversations. And if somebody came to mind during this episode, trust that instinct and share this with them. For someone watching this that is a parent or wants to be a parent, if there was one thing you wanted them to understand about the psychological shift that's going to happen to them moving into that transition, what would it be?
Parenthood really unveils a lot of the things that we keep in the dark. And it's very easy for us to keep on keeping on when we don't have to stop and reflect or be insightful or aware about the way that our behavior, thoughts, feelings, emotions impact someone else. It really does highlight to us the things that we are really great at, and it is a reciprocation in sorts of the time that we invest in something. And I think that if anyone wants to transition into parenthood, it is really important that they look introspectively first. I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to get to know yourself before you become a parent. And if you are in a partnership and wanting to transition into that parenthood role together, it is extremely important to get to know your relationship as deeply as you can, because it bears all. And it's something that I think and have spoken about with clients, that it really is something that challenges you in good and bad ways. And it gives you the opportunity to grow and develop and expand in ways you may not have before. It doesn't come without its difficulties. And I think that it is really important that we know that it isn't clean cut. And there is no rule book on how to become a parent, and no one can tell you how to do it the way you need to. And it's incredibly important that we back ourselves in this transition, and that we really do support what it is that we value and guard ourselves, and really take the time to build the boundaries, like you were saying, around what it is to be a parent for me, and or my partner and what our dynamic will look like in the future. I think that that's not spoken about enough. It's the, what to buy, what not to buy.
Do we need a bouncer or not?
Yeah. Are we doing screen time or not? To vaccinate, not to vaccinate. These conversations are huge, particularly online. Postpartum anxiety and depression, all of these conversations are had, and I think not enough is talked about in terms of what can you do before all of this happens? What time can you invest in for yourself to be able to get yourself to a place where, and again, this is on a continuum and we're ever progressing through these versions of ourselves, but taking the time to get to know you. That really is, if I was to leave you with one thing, it is just really build on who you are first.
Yeah. And I definitely want to echo that idea that there's seasons not just in you, but in your relationship as well and in your growing family. And so I think there's a skill around adaptability and change. Like all of this work is necessary and important, but a lot of it happens on the fly as you're going. Yeah. So just opening up the channels for that growth, for that learning, for that self-understanding and holding that space for yourself or your partner or your relationship or your child. Like that is the skill, I think, that takes you miles and allows you to like move through the seasons too.
I think adaptability is probably my 2026 word for the year.
Love it.
It is the most important thing to really channel here is how adaptable can you be? And the human race wouldn't be where it is today if we hadn't adapted to our environments, to our ever-changing seasons in our lives, in the world around us, in other people. And I think that that's something that we need to continue to really focus on.
100%. Well, Nancy, this has been an absolute pleasure. Genuinely.
The pleasure is all mine.
To be able to connect with you in different, we're sitting in Dubai now.
Yeah.
The first time we recorded, we were in Sydney. So much has happened in our life. I can't wait to see the next time I have you on, what else has changed in our life. But you're such a beautiful friend for me, and I get to learn so much from you, from the professional work that you do as well. And so I'm very grateful for you. I'm very grateful that you carved out time on your holiday to sit with me today.
It's my absolute pleasure.
And
the fact that
lots.
we could get a podcast time in the week that I'm here has been incredible. I'm so glad we did it.
Me too. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.